Battle through the firmament. Great world. Chapter 552. All of them were killed. What happened up ahead? Wan Laoshan followed closely behind Xiaoyan. For some reason, his heart was beating fast. That shrill roar just now seemed to have entangled the shadow in his heart, and it couldn't be gotten rid of. He had been roaming the capital of chaos for dozens of years, and he had seen nothing. However, he was stunned by this sudden shout. Xiaoyan's brows tightly knitted together. Spiritual energy surged out from his body in all directions. In the next moment, his facial expression changed drastically. He gritted his teeth and pursed his lips tightly, not saying a word. Yuan Tongshan led his son and rushed forward. His face was filled with shock. The miserable cry just now had clearly shocked him. He had already forgotten about Xiaoyan. Yuan Liang turned his head and looked at Xiaoyan and his father. His eyes were filled with shock. He didn't know what had happened, so he could only follow Yuan Tongshan's lead. Along the way, the few of them remained silent. As they got closer and closer, a strong smell was emitted from afar. This is the smell of blood. A thunder seemed to flash across Wan Laoshan's mind. His nose wrinkled and he immediately smelled it. His expression changed instantly as if he had thought of something. Hiss! Seeing Xiaoyan and Yuan Tongshan stop in their tracks, Wan Laoshan hurriedly looked around. The scene in front of him made him suck in a breath of cold air. Even though he was an iron-blooded man, his heart still trembled when he saw this scene. They are all dead. Yuan Tongshan's son looked around. Both of his legs went weak and he almost fell to the ground. Dozens of people in front of him were lying in pools of blood. The dark red blood had dyed the ground red. Everyone looked terrified and their eyes were wide open, as if they had seen something terrifying before the death. Elder Song. Yuan Tongshan's footsteps were heavy. His face was ashen as he walked in the middle of a pile of corpses. At first glance, he saw an old man lying on the ground with his head facing the sky. His eyes were wide open as he looked up. There was a bloody hole the size of a finger on his throat, and fresh blood was flowing out from it. His snow-white beard had been soaked in blood, and he no longer had any breath left. This man was Old Man Song, who had joined hands with Yuan Tongshan and the others to kill the 9 giant dragons. He was an emperor cultivation expert, but he had also died here. Xiaoyan furrowed his brows. He looked around and saw the corpse of the enchanting woman who had reached the emperor cultivation. Her pretty face had turned pale, and her face had lost all color. There was a distance between them and this place. It was obvious that she wanted to escape, but she had lost her life. Brother Zhang. When he saw the corpse of another emperor cultivation warrior, Yuan Tongshan gritted his teeth so hard that they were almost crushed to pieces. Both of his eyes were filled with blood. When he looked around, an indescribable feeling of oppression immediately emerged in his heart. What was going on? How could it cause the death of 3 emperor cultivation warriors in this place? This should be done by one person. Xiaoyan's soul force swept across all the dead people. He lifted his head and spoke slowly. Almost everyone died in the same manner. A bloody hole had appeared in their throats. Other than that, their chests had been penetrated and their life force had completely disappeared. At this strange moment, he could no longer care about the fight between him and Yuan Tongshan. One person. It's the Yin and Yang elders. Or Li Xianfeng. Yuan Tongshan's body trembled. He hastily protected Yuan Liang behind his back. His Dao Qi surged out from his body, and he looked around vigilantly. Xiaoyan remained silent, but his heart was filled with doubt. Nearly 100 people had died here, and they could only hear a miserable cry. In other words, the rest of them had been killed by a sneak attack while they were completely unaware of what had happened. They had killed nearly 100 people at once. This method was truly unbelievable. Could it really be Li Xianfeng? Xiaoyan was surprised and bewildered. The former was known as the assassin of the Ghost Venerable, and his art of assassination was mysterious and unpredictable. With this ability, he could easily kill these Monic Emperor warriors, but what was his purpose for doing so? With his dignity as a heavenly sovereign warrior, he wouldn't lower himself to kill so many Monarch Emperor warriors. As for Zhu Yan, Xiaoyan didn't even consider it. Even if the former side had a total of 6 Emperor cultivation warriors, it was impossible for them to kill so many people cleanly. Impossible. If Li Xianfeng attacks, it will cause the fury of the entire capital of chaos. It's impossible that he doesn't understand this point. Wan Laoshan recovered from his shock and spoke in a deep voice. He had traveled almost the entire capital of chaos, so he naturally knew some extremely secretive things. Xiaoyan was silent for a moment before he spoke in a deep voice. In his heart, he had already eliminated Li Xianfeng. The abilities of the people in the future. At that time, they were only half an incense stick of time away from this place. If they wanted to kill him, the two of them would have died without a doubt. Since Yuan Tongshan was able to open the trading company all over the capital of chaos, he naturally had the ability to do so. When he heard this, he immediately understood. His expression was solemn as he looked at his surroundings. When he saw the tragic death of everyone, he felt a little lucky in his heart. Sir, can you clearly see the death of these people? Even an emperor cultivation was killed by them, and they couldn't even let out a miserable cry. If you meet the murderer, do you have the ability to escape? Yuan Tongshan took a deep breath and spoke in a deep voice. Xiaoyan's eyes paused, and he looked at the place where the emperor cultivation woman was. He guessed that the scream was coming from her. After hearing Yuan Tongshan's words, he smiled and said, "Boss Yuan, what you mean is, you have extraordinary abilities. Even I don't have the confidence to defeat you. The situation in front of us is really strange. If we split up, we might die quietly. So, let's work together." After saying that, Yuan Tongshan's eyes sparkled. He looked at Xiaoyan with a solemn expression. There wasn't a trace of a joking expression on his face. "Boss Yuan, you don't want my things anymore." Xiaoyan sneered and said with a strange smile. "Even if it's good stuff, you still have to live to enjoy it." Yuan Tongshan smiled. His expression was indifferent, and there wasn't any trace of awkwardness on his face. Seeing Yuan Tongshan's reaction, Xiaoyan couldn't help but be speechless in his heart. This man in front of him was indeed a wily old fox that had roamed the capital of chaos for many years. He didn't panic at all when he saw Yuan Tongshan's face. "Since it's Boss Yuan's request, I have to give him face." Xiaoyan glanced at the former indifferently and said casually. Unlike Yuan Liang, who was burning with anger, Yuan Tongshan just smiled and then looked around. After a moment of silence, he said, "May I know your name?" "Gu Yan." Xiaoyan remained calm and collected. "Brother Gu, what should we do now?" Yuan Tongshan nodded his head lightly. Without any doubt, he pointed at the path ahead and spoke in a deep voice. There were 2 paths in front of them. It was incomparably dark, and no one knew where it led to. Xiaoyan pondered for a moment. He walked forward and stood between the 2 paths. Just as he was about to use his soul power to investigate, his hair suddenly stood up on his back. There was no time to think. Starlight flickered under his feet, and he had already arrived dozens of steps away. Swoosh! A black shadow was as fast as lightning. Its sharp claws smashed down and shattered the ground where Xiaoyan was standing. Judging from the momentum, if it hit someone's body, even the defense of an emperor cultivation warrior would be torn to pieces. Creak! Seeing Xiaoyan dodge, the black shadow didn't chase after him. Instead, it took out an unknown object and bit down on it. Immediately, a creepy sound was heard. Swoosh! In the next moment, the black figure seemed to have sensed something. It let out a miserable and cold laugh. Its body suddenly flashed and rushed towards one of the paths. Its speed was so fast that it disappeared in an instant. Is it a person? After seeing the true identity of the black shadow, Xiaoyan couldn't help but be stunned. Then, as if he had thought of something, he sucked in a breath of cold air and said, "Boss Yuan, did you see what he ate?" In the distance, Yuan Tongshan had an ugly expression on his face. He protected his son behind him and his voice was almost squeezed out from the gaps between his teeth. A human arm. Chapter end. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe.